Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We're going to do not an official unboxing today, but I just got it and it is new and shiny. And by new and shiny, I mean it was released quite a long time ago, but I just got it. We are talking about Proud Monster Deluxe from Compass Games. Original series designer, I think, on this was Ty Bomba. Redesign was Don Johnson. Not that Don Johnson, the other Don, the Wargaming Don Johnson. Big 3-inch box. If we, in fact, compare this thing to a modern Compass Games box, this is Pacific Tide. Same dimensions on the top, but it's 3 inches instead of 1.5 inches like Pacific Tide. So, super interesting looking game. Let's see what we get here. This is a reprint and recombination of two different games that appeared in Command magazine back in the day. The first was Proud Monster and the other one was Death and Destruction. So we have a rule book. We have here, this is a black and white rule book. When did this come out? Speaking of which. We do have some errata here, which may or may not have come with the game. This may have come from the fellow that I got the game from. This is copyright 2011, so this thing is 9 years old now. I'm not sure I recognize that Compass had been around that long, actually. But this covers if you don't see it on the cover here, this covers the entire war on the Eastern Front up to close to the end, April 1944. It is a 4-mapper, so it's got a little bit of an unusual scale. I know that there are not that many East Front World War II games that cover the whole war, and it's 4 standard size maps, which this is. There's a big glossary. Black and white with this sort of tinted paper. It's not really tinted. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it's actually images from the map. I like that, actually. It might result in a little extra eye strain. Looking at the table of contents, I would call the paper real standard wargame paper. Feels pretty good, but it's not super duper thick. There are no scenarios in here. So it looks like the entire contents of this book are all like core game rules, and one would normally expect. Here's some bookkeeping that apparently you need to do. That's interesting. Yeah, so one of the major features of this is the way the untried units work. I really haven't dug into that very heavily, so not really sure how it's going to work. Original game developers Ted Rasier and Chris Perello. That's interesting too. As far as I know, this is still available, and the only really terrifying thing is what it costs. It costs like $120, but it's huge too. So wait a minute. Well, I have a second copy of the errata here, apparently. So let's put those back in the box so we don't have to pause through them again. We've got an array of player cards. Here is a combat summary and unit description chart. We got 2 of these. We have, looks like some kind of Soviet player aid or setup card. Yeah, that's what that looks like. Here is a display, Axis combat boxes. This makes the combat look intricate. I'm not sure how this works. I'll be curious to see how it works. I know the game's got a pretty good reputation. Soviet reserve boxes and Axis reserve boxes, and we've got Roman numerals on these, and of course Arabic numerals on the Soviet card. Here's an Axis card, and again, this looks kind of like a scenario aid of some kind. Here we have the Axis turn record track. There's 2 separate turn record tracks, huh? And I guess the idea here is that you're going to put your reinforcements on here, which makes sense. And it looks like we have some kind of impulse-based system. I'm really reaching here. In that we see October 1/2 and October 3/4. So what that tells me is that there's some kind of step inside the turn, and we have bi-week turns of 2 weeks. Here's a CRT and a terrain effects chart. Doesn't look incredibly well laid out. Soviet combat boxes. So that's an interesting array of player aids. Real curious to see how this combat system works now. We have, I'm going to try and get to the map last. All right, that's interesting. Are we missing something? Because we could be. Looks like we might be missing a playbook, because I'm not seeing scenarios, unless the scenarios are completely subsumed by the cards, which is possible. Not like that's the strangest thing I've ever heard. Let's take a quick look at the maps. There's 4 maps, as you can see. I'm not sure who did the map art. Let's see if we can find out. I did see that on here somewhere. Deluxe Game Graphics, Todd Davis. Okay, not sure I'm familiar with his work, but I think it looks fairly nice. Now, the map stock is a type of stock that I have seen from Compass before. I rather like the art. I think it looks pretty nice. It is a very glossy stock. I would be concerned about, it's so glossy that I would be concerned about chipping, which is a problem that Compass maps have had, particularly, not all of them, but some of them have, particularly ones this shiny. This is super duper shiny. But generally speaking, a pretty handsome map. Hexes are, looks like we have 9/16 inch counters, and the hexes are a bit oversized, which is always nice to see, right? Just makes it a little easier to handle. I got to figure out if I'm missing a playbook here, which I will have to probably do after the video. But we got 10 sheets of counters. So these are a standard counter layout on what I would call a very standard white core stock. It is not very thick. It is not paper thin, but it's not very thick. I consider this to be about average counter stock nowadays, but I think that's starting to change from the major publishers. GMT is using thicker stock, MMP is using thicker stock. Certainly the stock out of New England Simulations, recent product, is definitely thicker than this. So it's not super duper thick, but it's not so flimsy that I'm like mad, or that I think it'll make the counters harder to handle. It's not quite that thin. But it could be thicker. All right, so we got Soviet units. It looks like we have red for guards, would be my offhand guess. Don't know what these hexes with the arrows, refit maybe. Fieldworks counters, interesting. We get some kind of Soviet mech counters. Not sure what those are all about. So here we got into the actual units here. And I think these are really dense counters, okay? The information is packed on them very tightly. It does look like the registration is good. Check in the back as well, because it's important that the registration is good if you're going to pack information this tightly on these counters. It looks like we might be just a hair off on some of these down here, but not so bad that I think it's going to be an issue. Are these Finns? Is that the idea here? German downgraded infantry. So no, they're not Finns. But we do have Hungarians and Italians and Romanians. Interesting that they made the Romanians blue and the Hungarians green. That's the opposite of what we typically see. Here are German infantry. Here are Soviet guards, which are indeed the red ones. So presumably the black type versus the white type does mean something. Looking at these in person, I don't feel like the factors are a problem with contrast, but it is definitely, from where my head is right now, it is definitely easier to read the white print on these red counters than it is the black print. But I can see the factors, and that's the more important thing. Okay, so over here we have Soviet tank corps, Soviet tank divisions right here. I think they're pretty good looking counters, to be honest. Soviet motorized rifle divisions. Okay. I'm in the market, to be honest, for an East Front game of this scale, of which, like I said, there aren't many. If you want like a legit big game covering the Eastern Front, I mean, if you want the big game, you go and play Europa, but nobody wants that. I wouldn't sentence convicted felons to that at this point. Soviet motorized rifle brigades. What are these yellow guys? Rifle brigades. So, I don't know if this is going to end up being a convoluted system or not, but it's not going to be as convoluted as Europa, I can tell you that, since it wasn't designed in 1973. So, a very interesting looking game. I've had my eye on this for a good long time now. It's one of those Compass things that I regretted not buying at Compass Expo, but I got a deal on this open copy from a local fella, so I am pretty happy with that. Assuming that it's complete, and if not, I'm going to yell at them. But it's a quite handsome game, I think, and looks interesting. And the old Command magazine game was pretty well regarded at the time as well. So please like the video if you have enjoyed watching it. Please leave me any questions or comments in the comments below, and please consider subscribing to the channel. I will see everybody next time. Happy wargaming.